My name is Rachel, and I am 35 years old. I have always been the invisible middle child in my family, caught between my accomplished older brother and my figure skating prodigy little sister. When I graduated with honors from nursing school, after years of working multiple jobs to pay my tuition, my parents gave me a coffee mug. My younger sister, Amanda. For her graduation, they surprised her with a $15,000 trip to Switzerland. That day, something inside me finally broke after years of swallowing my pain. Before I tell you how I finally stood up for myself after years of being invisible, drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from, and hit that like and subscribe button. Growing up in suburban Minnesota, our family looked perfectly normal from the outside. My father, Robert, built a successful construction business from the ground up, and my mother, Diana, was heavily involved in the local country club social scene. My older brother James was the firstborn son who could do no wrong in my father's eyes, and I was the middle child just trying to find my place. Everything changed when my sister Amanda was 6 years old. During a community ice skating event, a local coach spotted her natural talent and suggested my parents enroll her in figure skating lessons. From that moment on, Amanda became the golden child of our family. Her skating competitions, practices, and coaching sessions became the center around which our entire family life revolved. I still remember Amanda's 10th birthday party. My parents rented out an entire ice rink, hired a professional photographer, and invited 50 kids from her school and skating club. They ordered a custom 3-tier cake shaped like an ice skate and hired entertainment. The local newspaper even covered it because my mother had connections with the editor. 2 months later, on my 13th birthday, my parents forgot we had planned a small sleepover with my 3 best friends. When we came home from school, nothing was prepared. My mother was rushing Amanda to an emergency costume fitting for an upcoming competition. Dad handed me his credit card and told me to order pizza, then left to join them. My friends and I ended up watching movies in the basement, and I pretended not to care when they asked where my cake was. This pattern continued throughout our childhood. When I had a lead role in the school play, neither of my parents attended because it conflicted with Amanda's regional skating competition. When I won the science fair in 8th grade, my father just nodded and asked if I had packed Amanda's special skate cleaning kit for her weekend training camp. Christmas mornings became a painful reminder of where I stood in the family hierarchy. Amanda would receive expensive skating equipment, designer clothes, and the latest electronics. I would get practical items like socks, notebooks, or gift cards to bookstores. One year, when I was 16, Amanda received a custom laptop for her skating videos and social media. I got a scientific calculator for my AP classes. After years of this treatment, I developed a coping mechanism. I became fiercely independent and focused all my energy on academic achievement. If my parents weren't going to notice me, I would build a life where I didn't need their approval or support. I worked part-time jobs starting at 16, saved my money carefully, and poured myself into my studies. The one person who saw me was my grandmother Martha, my mother's mother. She lived about 30 minutes away, and I would often bike to her house when things got too uncomfortable at home. Grandma Martha had a way of making me feel valued just for being myself. She would listen to my stories about school, bake my favorite cookies, and tell me how proud she was of my independence and intelligence. When it came time to choose a career path, I decided on nursing. I was drawn to the idea of helping others during their most vulnerable moments, providing the kind of care and attention I had always craved myself. When I announced my decision at dinner one night, my father barely looked up from his phone, where he was watching Amanda's latest practice video. "Nursing, that's a lot of hard work for not much money," he commented before turning to Amanda. "Sweetheart coach Stephanie thinks you should increase to 6 training sessions a week before nationals." My mother simply asked if I was sure I wouldn't prefer something more prestigious like becoming a doctor. When I explained my passion for direct patient care, she just shrugged and changed the subject to Amanda's upcoming skating costume fittings. Grandma Martha, however, took me out to lunch the following weekend to celebrate my decision. "Nursing is a noble profession," she told me, her eyes shining with genuine pride. "You have such a caring heart, Rachel. Those patients will be lucky to have you." Her validation meant everything to me, and it strengthened my resolve to pursue this path with or without my parents' enthusiasm. Little did I know just how much I would have to rely on my own resources as I embarked on my nursing education. Getting through nursing school was one of the hardest things I have ever done. Unlike Amanda, who had our parents covering every expense at her private university, I had to finance my education largely on my own. My parents contributed the bare minimum, claiming they needed to save for Amanda's potential Olympic training. I received some financial aid and took out modest loans, but I was determined to graduate with as little debt as possible. This meant working not just one, but multiple jobs throughout my nursing program. On weekdays, I would attend clinical rotations from 7 in the morning until 2 in the afternoon, then rush to my campus library job until 6. 3 nights a week, I waited tables at a local restaurant until midnight. On weekends, I picked up CNA shifts at a nursing home, often working 12-hour shifts that left me exhausted, but gave me valuable hands-on experience. My living situation reflected my financial constraints. While Amanda enjoyed a beautiful one-bedroom apartment near her campus, fully furnished by our parents, I shared a tiny two-bedroom apartment with 2 other nursing students. My room barely fit a twin bed and a desk, but it was all I could afford. I became an expert at finding textbooks secondhand or borrowing them from the library. I packed lunches every day, cut my own hair, and couldn't remember the last time I had bought new clothes that weren't scrubs for clinical rotations. Despite these challenges, I was determined to excel academically. After long shifts at the restaurant, I would come home at 12:30 and study until 2 or 3 in the morning, fueled by cheap coffee and sheer determination. During breaks at the nursing home, I would review flashcards and clinical notes. On bus rides between campus and work, I would listen to recorded lectures. The effort paid off academically. I maintained a 3.8 GPA throughout the program and was invited to join the Nursing Honors Society. When the invitation letter arrived, I called my parents, hoping they might attend the induction ceremony. "That sounds nice, honey," my mother said distractedly. "But that weekend, we will be in Colorado for Amanda's exhibition skate. She has been invited as a special guest performer. Maybe next time." There would be no next time. This was a one-time honor. I attended the ceremony alone, watching as other students celebrated with their proud parents. Professor Joanna Torres, my advanced medical surgical nursing instructor, noticed me sitting alone at the reception afterward. "Where is your family, Rachel?" she asked, genuinely concerned. When I explained the situation, trying to keep my voice casual, her expression softened. "Their loss," she said firmly. "You are one of the most dedicated students I have ever taught. I would be proud to have a daughter like you." Professor Torres became something of a mentor to me after that. She recommended me for a competitive summer internship at the university hospital, wrote glowing recommendation letters for my job applications, and always made time to answer my questions or offer advice. In many ways, she provided the professional guidance and support my parents should have given me. My final semester of nursing school was particularly intense. I was completing my critical care rotation in the ICU, working with the most vulnerable patients, and learning to manage complex medical equipment and interventions. The learning curve was steep, and the emotional toll of caring for critically ill patients was significant. There were nights I came home and cried from the combination of stress exhaustion and occasional heartbreak of losing patients. Yet I also experienced moments of profound connection and fulfillment. I will never forget Mr. Garcia, an elderly patient who had no family visitors during his 2-week ICU stay. I made a point to sit with him during my breaks, listening to stories about his life as a high school history teacher. When he was finally discharged to a rehabilitation facility, he grasped my hand and said, "You have a gift, young lady. You made me feel like a person, not just a patient." It was moments like these that confirmed I had chosen the right profession, regardless of my parents' lack of enthusiasm. As graduation approached, I felt a growing sense of pride in what I had accomplished, largely on my own. I had secured a position in the new graduate program at University Medical Center, beating out dozens of other applicants. I had lined up affordable housing closer to the hospital. I had even managed to save a small emergency fund despite my tight budget. The night before graduation, I allowed myself to feel a glimmer of hope. Maybe tomorrow would be different. Maybe seeing me in my cap and gown graduating with honors would finally make my parents see me. Maybe this accomplishment, this tangible proof of my hard work and dedication, would be enough to earn their recognition, even if just for one day. While I was struggling through nursing school, Amanda's life continued on a very different track. After years of competitive figure skating, she eventually plateaued at the national level. She was good, but not quite Olympic material, something that devastated my parents almost more than it did Amanda. After a particularly disappointing performance at the U.S. Figure Skating Championships, her senior year of high school, Amanda decided to focus on college instead of continuing to pursue skating professionally. My parents, especially my father, were initially disappointed, but they quickly channeled their energy into making sure Amanda had the best possible college experience. They helped her apply to Westfield University, an expensive private school known for its prestigious business program and social connections. When she was accepted, they threw her a lavish party and announced they had been saving for her education since she was born. I tried not to feel bitter about this revelation, especially considering how they had contributed only minimally to my education costs. But it was hard not to compare our experiences. Amanda moved into a beautiful off-campus apartment that my parents paid for in full. They also bought her a new car so she wouldn't have to rely on public transportation like I did. Each month, they deposited a generous allowance into her account for living expenses, shopping, and socializing. Meanwhile, I was counting pennies to make rent and working myself to exhaustion just to stay afloat. Every few months, my parents would make the trip to visit Amanda at school. They would take her and her friends out to expensive restaurants, help decorate her apartment, and bring her care packages filled with gourmet treats and new clothes. In contrast, they visited me exactly once during my entire nursing program, and that was only because they were passing through town on their way to see Amanda. Despite all the advantages and support, Amanda struggled academically. Business courses didn't come naturally to her the way skating had, and she found herself unprepared for the rigors of college coursework. Rather than expecting her to figure it out on her own, as they would have done with me, my parents immediately hired private tutors for every subject she found challenging. When she failed a required statistics course, my father made a substantial donation to the business school that same semester, and Amanda was mysteriously allowed to retake the course during winter break with a different, more lenient professor. Whenever I expressed frustration about the disparity in how we were treated, my parents had a ready supply of justifications. Amanda needs more support. She's not as naturally independent as you are, my mother would say. You've always been so self-sufficient, Rachel. We know you can handle things on your own, my father would add, as if my independence was something I had chosen rather than something I had been forced to develop. We're just giving each of you what you need, they would insist. Amanda needs more guidance and you need more freedom. The Thanksgiving of my final year in nursing school was particularly painful. I had managed to get 3 days off from my various jobs, a minor miracle, and had taken a bus home eager for a brief respite from my exhausting schedule. I arrived to find the house buzzing with excitement, but not about my visit. Amanda had just been accepted into a spring semester study abroad program in Paris. My parents couldn't stop talking about it throughout the entire holiday weekend. They discussed which neighborhoods in Paris were safest, what weekend trips she should take to other European countries, and how this would give her such an advantage in the global business world. When I tried to share news about my successful clinical rotation in the emergency department, and how I had been commended by the charge nurse for my quick thinking during a cardiac arrest situation, my mother nodded absently. That's nice, dear. Did you hear that Amanda's program includes an internship component at a French luxury brand company? Such an amazing networking opportunity. That evening, I helped Grandma Martha clear the dishes, while everyone else moved to the living room to look at pictures of Paris on the large TV screen. I heard what you said about your emergency room experience, Grandma said quietly as we loaded the dishwasher. That sounds incredibly impressive. You must have kept your cool under intense pressure. I felt tears spring to my eyes at her simple acknowledgement. Thanks, Grandma. It was really scary, but also exhilarating to know I helped save someone. She squeezed my hand. You're going to be an exceptional nurse, Rachel. I see how hard you're working, even if others don't." Later that weekend, I learned that Amanda would be graduating the same spring as me despite being 3 years younger. She had loaded up on courses and would complete her business degree in just 3 years. This meant our graduations would be happening within weeks of each other. Part of me felt a twinge of disappointment knowing that once again, I would be sharing what should have been my moment. But another part of me held on to a small, persistent hope. Maybe having both daughters graduate at the same time would finally put us on equal footing in our parents' eyes. Maybe this milestone would be significant enough to earn me the recognition I had been seeking for so long. As I boarded the bus back to campus, I allowed myself to imagine a graduation celebration where both Amanda and I were celebrated equally, where my accomplishments were acknowledged alongside hers, where just for one day I wasn't the invisible middle child, but a daughter worthy of pride and attention. It was a beautiful fantasy. I had no idea how painfully it would be shattered. May 15th finally arrived. After 4 grueling years of balancing full-time nursing school with multiple jobs, I was graduating with honors. The ceremony was being held in the university's grand auditorium, with hundreds of nursing graduates in white caps and gowns. As I lined up with my classmates, I scanned the audience, wondering if my family had actually shown up. To my surprise, I spotted them in the middle section. My father was checking his phone, my mother was fanning herself with the program, and Amanda was texting someone. Only Grandma Martha was actively looking around, probably trying to spot me. Still, they had come, and that meant something. When they called the honors graduates to receive their special cords, I walked across the stage with my head held high. "Rachel Wilson, Bachelor of Science in Nursing, summa cum laude," the dean announced. There was a small burst of applause, and for a moment I thought I heard Grandma Martha's distinctive cheer. After the ceremony, I found my family in the crowded lobby. Grandma Martha hugged me tightly. "I am so proud of you, my brilliant girl," she whispered in my ear. My father awkwardly patted my shoulder. "Congratulations, Rachel. 4 years went by quick, huh?" My mother nodded. "The white looks nice with your complexion. We need to get a quick picture for the family Christmas card." Amanda gave me a brief hug. "Congrats, sis. It's pretty cool you got those honor cords." It wasn't exactly the emotional reaction I had hoped for, but they were making an effort. Maybe things really were changing. "I made dinner reservations to celebrate," my father announced. "We should get going so we're not late." I felt a surge of gratitude. They had planned a celebration dinner for me. This was progress. Until we pulled up at Giovanni's, an upscale Italian restaurant that I had never mentioned liking. In fact, I was fairly certain I had once mentioned having a mild shellfish allergy after eating their seafood risotto years ago. "This is Amanda's favorite restaurant," my mother explained, noticing my confusion. "Since she's home from college, we thought it would be nice to go somewhere special. She's been missing." Of course, even my graduation dinner wasn't really about me. Once we were seated, the conversation immediately centered around Amanda. Her graduation was the following weekend, and my parents were full of questions and excitement about the ceremony, her plans after college, and the interviews she already had lined up through my father's business connections. When I tried to share news about the new graduate nursing position I had secured at University Medical Center, which was quite competitive, my mother interrupted me mid-sentence. "Speaking of exciting news," she said, looking at Amanda, "we have a special graduation surprise to announce." My father beamed with pride. "Since both our girls are graduating this year, we wanted to do something truly special." I felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe they had planned a joint celebration or trip for both of us. Maybe they had finally recognized that my accomplishments were just as worthy of celebration as Amanda's. My father reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small gift bag which he handed to me. "For our nursing graduate," he said with what seemed like genuine warmth. I opened it to find a coffee mug with the word nurse printed on it in a generic font. Inside the mug was a $50 gift card to a chain restaurant. "To help you celebrate with your nursing friends," my mother explained. "Thank you," I said, trying to keep the disappointment from my voice. It was a thoughtful enough gift, if somewhat impersonal. Then my father turned to Amanda with a much larger envelope. "And for our business graduate who will be entering the corporate world soon." Amanda opened the envelope and pulled out a glossy brochure. Her eyes widened as she flipped through it. "Oh my God, Switzerland! Are you serious?" My mother was practically bouncing in her seat. 3 weeks in Switzerland, all expenses paid. The finest hotels, first-class flights, a private tour guide for the Alps, chocolate tasting experiences, and shopping in Zurich. We've already booked it for July. "This is incredible," Amanda squealed, jumping up to hug both our parents. "I can't believe you did this. It must have cost a fortune." "Only the best for our graduate," my father said proudly. "About $15,000, but you deserve it, Princess. Your mother and I are so proud of how quickly you completed your degree." $15,000 for a 3-week vacation. While I got a coffee mug and a $50 gift card, I sat there in stunned silence, clutching my nurse mug as Amanda and my parents excitedly discussed the itinerary: the Alps, private guided tours, luxury accommodations, shopping allowances. Meanwhile, I would be starting my nursing career with student loan payments and a barely adequate salary that would cover my modest apartment and basic living expenses. "Rachel, isn't this exciting for your sister?" my mother prompted when she finally noticed my silence. I forced a smile. "Very exciting. Congratulations, Amanda." Across the table, Grandma Martha was watching me with concern in her eyes. She alone seemed to recognize the inequity of the situation. When Amanda started showing everyone the brochure pictures on her phone, Grandma reached over and squeezed my hand under the table. "I need to use the restroom," I mumbled, sliding out of my seat before anyone could respond. In the privacy of the bathroom stall, I finally let the tears fall. All those years of working myself to exhaustion, of putting myself through school, of achieving academic excellence despite every obstacle. And my reward was a $15 mug with the word nurse on it. Meanwhile, Amanda, who had every advantage, who had private tutors and parental financial support, who had never worked a day in her life, was being rewarded with a $15,000 European vacation. I splashed cold water on my face, fixed my makeup, and returned to the table with a practiced smile. I had years of experience hiding my hurt feelings after all. I sat through the rest of dinner, nodding and smiling at appropriate intervals, as Amanda dominated the conversation with her Switzerland plans. On the drive home alone to my apartment, the reality of my family situation hit me with crushing clarity. Nothing I ever did would be enough. No achievement would ever put me on equal footing with Amanda. I had been telling myself for years that if I just worked hard enough, achieved enough, proved myself enough, my parents would finally see me. But the truth was painfully clear now. Nothing would change. And something inside me had finally reached its breaking point. The days following my graduation blurred together in a haze of emotional numbness. I had a week before starting my new job at University Medical Center time I had planned to use for rest and preparation. Instead, I found myself spiraling into a depression unlike anything I had experienced before. I called in sick to my restaurant job, something I had never done in 3 years of employment there. I ignored texts from my nursing school friends who wanted to celebrate our graduation. I stayed in bed late into the afternoon, replaying memories of lifelong favoritism and wondering what was so fundamentally wrong with me that my own parents couldn't love me the way they loved my sister. Was I too serious? Not pretty enough? Too independent? What quality did Amanda possess that I lacked so completely? These questions tormented me as I moved like a ghost through my small apartment, barely eating, hardly sleeping. On the 4th day of this fog, my phone rang with Grandma Martha's special ringtone. I almost didn't answer, not wanting her to hear the hollowness in my voice, but Grandma Martha was the one person I couldn't bring myself to ignore. "Hello," I answered, trying to inject some life into my voice. "Rachel," she said immediately. "Something's wrong, I can hear it. What's going on, sweetheart?" And just like that, the dam broke. I told her everything. How the graduation gifts had made me feel worthless. How I had realized that no matter what I achieved, I would never be valued in my family the way Amanda was. How tired I was of trying to earn love that should have been freely given. "I have known this was happening since you were little," Grandma Martha said softly when I finished. "I have tried to speak to your mother about it many times, but she always becomes defensive. Your father is even worse, completely blind to his favoritism. Why? I asked the question that had haunted me for years. Why do they love her so much more than me? Grandma sighed heavily. It's not about loving one child more than another, though I know it feels that way to you. Your parents are deeply flawed people who have projected their own issues onto their children. Amanda's early skating talent became an extension of their own identities, a source of status and validation they craved. You, my dear, were always too much your own person, too independent, too authentic for them to mold that way. So, it's my fault for not being moldable enough? I asked bitterly. No, sweetheart. It's their failure as parents, not yours as a daughter. But Rachel, you can't keep swallowing this pain. It's eating you alive. You need to address it directly with them. Even as she said it, my phone buzzed with a new family group text. It was my mother sending yet another update about Amanda's Switzerland trip planning. They had just booked a helicopter tour over the Alps. There were pictures of the luxury chalet they would be staying in for part of the trip. Another text followed. Rachel, we need you to dog sit Bella while we take Amanda to the airport next month. We will be gone overnight since her flight is early morning. Let us know if you can do this for the family. Then a message from my father. Also, Rachel, since you are good with organizing paperwork, can you help put together Amanda's travel documents next weekend? You know how scattered she can be with important papers. The audacity was breathtaking. Not only had they given my sister a $15,000 trip while I got a coffee mug, but they also expected me to help facilitate her luxury vacation and take care of their dog while they sent her off in style. I need to go, Grandma, I said, a new determination hardening in my voice. I will call you back. I texted my mother. Sorry, I cannot dog sit. I have work commitments. It was the first time I had ever refused a family request. To my father, I responded, Amanda is an adult. She can organize her own travel documents. Then I added, I will come to Sunday dinner this weekend. We need to talk. My phone immediately rang. It was my mother, no doubt shocked by my uncharacteristic refusal. I let it go to voicemail. For the first time in my life, I was setting boundaries, and it felt both terrifying and liberating. That Sunday, I arrived at my parents' house with a calm determination that belied the storm of emotions inside me. Amanda was home from college for the summer, and the dinner conversation revolved entirely around her Switzerland plans. My father had printed out maps and itineraries. My mother had bought Amanda new luggage and travel accessories. I sat silently picking at my food as they discussed which Swiss watches would make the best souvenirs, and whether Amanda should add a side trip to northern Italy. Finally, my mother noticed my silence. Rachel, you have barely said a word all evening. What's wrong with you? You're being rude. Something inside me snapped. 26 years of suppressed feelings came rushing to the surface. What's wrong with me? I repeated, my voice eerily calm. What's wrong is that I have spent my entire life being treated like I matter less than Amanda. What's wrong is that I just graduated with highest honors from nursing school after working 3 jobs to put myself through college, and you gave me a coffee mug. Then you gave Amanda a $15,000 trip to Switzerland for completing a degree that you fully paid for, where she had private tutors and never had to work a single day. The table fell silent. My father's face flushed with anger. My mother's mouth opened in shock. Amanda looked down at her plate. What's wrong? I continued, my voice gaining strength. Is that you forgot my 13th birthday but threw Amanda a party that made the local newspaper. You missed my school play but rearranged your entire schedules for her skating competitions. You never once visited me during nursing school except when you were passing through town to see Amanda. I turned to my father directly. When I told you I got into nursing school, you barely looked up from your phone. When I made the dean's list, you said that's nice and changed the subject. When I got inducted into the Nursing Honor Society, neither of you bothered to come. Now you're being dramatic, my father said dismissively. We have always supported both our daughters equally. We just express it differently because you are different people with different needs. Equally. I laughed without humor. When was the last time you spent $15,000 on me? When was the last time you spent even $500 on me? You made me work through college while you paid every expense for Amanda. We helped with your tuition. my mother protested weakly. You contributed the minimum to qualify me for certain financial aid programs, I corrected. I will be paying student loans for years while Amanda graduates debt-free, and that's fine. I am proud of what I accomplished on my own. But do not sit there and pretend you have treated us equally. My mother's eyes filled with tears. After all we've done for you, she said, her voice trembling. How can you be so ungrateful? This isn't about gratitude, I replied. This is about acknowledging the truth of how this family operates. Amanda is the golden child who can do no wrong and deserves every advantage. I'm the afterthought who should be grateful for scraps of attention. I stood up from the table. I am done pretending this is normal or okay. I am done silently accepting being treated as less valuable. Either you acknowledge this pattern and we work to change it, or I will need to create some distance for my own mental health. My father's face had turned an alarming shade of red. If you walk out that door right now, don't expect to be welcomed back until you apologize for this outburst. I looked at him steadily. I'm not the one who needs to apologize. As I turned to leave, I heard Amanda's voice small but clear. She's right, you know. You do treat her differently. You always have. I didn't stay to hear their response. I walked out to my car, hands shaking, but mind clearer than it had been in years. I had finally spoken my truth, and regardless of how they responded, I knew I could never go back to silently accepting the status quo. The drive home was a blur of tears and emotions, a mix of devastation at the confrontation, but also a strange sense of liberation. For the first time in my life, I had stood up for my worth in my family. Whatever happened next, I had broken a lifetime pattern of silent acquiescence, and that alone felt like a victory. 3 days passed without a word from my parents. I expected as much from them, but I was surprised when my phone lit up with a text from Amanda. Can we meet for coffee, just us? I want to talk. We arranged to meet at a neutral coffee shop halfway between our parents' house and my apartment. I arrived early, my stomach in knots, unsure what to expect. When Amanda walked in, she looked different somehow. Less polished than usual, with her hair in a simple ponytail instead of her typical perfect blowout. Thanks for meeting me, she said, sliding into the chair across from me. The awkwardness between us was palpable. Despite growing up in the same house, we had never been close, separated by both age and our parents' treatment of us. I ordered you a vanilla latte, I said, pushing the cup toward her. You still like those, right? She looked surprised that I remembered her coffee preference. Yeah, thanks. We sat in uncomfortable silence for a moment before she finally spoke. I need to tell you something. I have always known about the favoritism. Always. And I have felt guilty about it for years. This was not what I had expected to hear. You knew... Amanda nodded, her eyes downcast. It was impossible not to notice. The gifts, the attention, the opportunities, the way they would drop everything for my skating but barely acknowledge your achievements. I saw it all. Then why didn't you ever say anything? I asked, trying to keep the accusation from my voice. I was a kid, she said softly. By the time I was old enough to really understand what was happening, the pattern was so established. And to be honest, I was afraid. Afraid of what? Afraid that if I pointed it out, they would stop loving me too. Her voice cracked slightly. That sounds terrible, I know. But when you grow up watching your parents withhold love and approval from your sibling, you learn to fear that it could happen to you too. I had never considered this perspective before, that the golden child status might come with its own kind of prison. I want you to know, Amanda continued, that I am not taking that trip to Switzerland. I told them yesterday that it doesn't feel right. Amanda, no, I protested. This isn't about the trip. You don't need to punish yourself for their behavior. It's not about punishing myself, she insisted. It's about finally doing what I should have done years ago, taking a stand against something that I know is wrong. We talked for nearly 3 hours, uncovering layers of family dynamics neither of us had fully articulated before. Amanda revealed how suffocating it had been to be the vessel for our parents' dreams and expectations, how her figure skating had never truly been her choice, but something she continued because it made them happy. They have been living vicariously through me since I was 6 years old, she explained. Dad never made it as a professional athlete, so my skating became his second chance. Mom was always obsessed with social status, and having a daughter in competitive figure skating gave her entry into circles she wanted to be part of. She paused, tracing the rim of her empty coffee cup. I think their marriage has been troubled for a long time, and focusing on my activities gave them something to unite around instead of dealing with their issues. In a weird way, the favoritism wasn't really about loving me more. It was about what I represented to them. This insight hit me like a revelation. The preferential treatment had never really been about Amanda versus me at all. It had been about our parents' own unresolved issues and needs. What happens now? I asked. I basically declared war at Sunday dinner. Amanda smiled sadly. Actually, things have been intense since you left. They tried to dismiss what you said at first, but I backed you up. Then Grandma Martha called and said she wanted to host a family meeting at her house this Saturday. She said either everyone attends or she will be reconsidering her estate planning. I couldn't help but laugh. Grandma Martha knew exactly how to get my parents' attention. She didn't really say that, did she? Word for word, Amanda confirmed with a grin. So they're going. Will you come too? I know it will be hard, but I think it's important, and I will be there supporting you this time. The idea of facing my parents again so soon was daunting, but having both Amanda and Grandma Martha as allies changed the dynamic considerably. Okay, I agreed, for Grandma Martha, and for us. That Saturday, I arrived at Grandma Martha's cozy house with a mixture of dread and determination. My parents were already there, sitting stiffly on the living room sofa. Amanda gave me an encouraging smile from an armchair near the window. Grandma Martha had set up 5 chairs in a circle and placed a plate of her famous chocolate chip cookies in the center, a deceptively casual touch for what was about to be an intense family confrontation. Thank you all for coming, Grandma Martha began once we were all seated. We're here because this family has a problem that has gone unaddressed for far too long. Rachel has been treated as less valuable, less worthy of love and support than Amanda. This stops today. My father immediately began to protest, but Grandma Martha held up her hand with surprising authority. Robert, you will have your turn to speak, but first, you and Diana need to listen. Really listen. What followed was one of the most painful but necessary conversations of my life. With Grandma Martha moderating, I calmly presented specific examples of the pattern of favoritism throughout my life. Amanda bravely added her own observations, confirming that the disparity in treatment had been obvious even to her as a child. My parents' initial defensiveness slowly gave way to uncomfortable recognition. My father, always the more stubborn of the two, finally acknowledged with reluctance that perhaps he had been more enthusiastic about Amanda's activities than mine. I just connected more with the sports world, he admitted. I understood skating. I didn't really understand what Rachel was doing in school or why it mattered so much to her. My mother's response was more surprising. After nearly an hour of discussion, she suddenly burst into tears. My parents always favored my sister over me, she confessed, her voice barely audible. She was the pretty one, the social one. I was always told I wasn't enough. I swore I would never do that to my children, and now I see I've recreated the exact same pattern. This revelation stunned all of us into silence. The generational nature of this family dysfunction had never occurred to me. The difference, Grandma Martha said gently, is that you have a chance to break this cycle, Diana. But it will take real work, not just good intentions. By the end of that long, exhausting day, we had agreed that our family needed professional help. My parents reluctantly committed to family therapy sessions, and my mother even agreed to individual counseling to address her own childhood wounds. There were no magical transformations or tearful group hugs. Real healing would take much longer than one afternoon conversation. But as I drove home that evening, I felt the first tentative hope that perhaps our family could evolve into something healthier. Amanda and I had formed a genuine connection for the first time, and my parents had at least acknowledged that there was a problem that needed addressing. It was a beginning, a painful, awkward beginning, but a beginning nonetheless. 6 months after that fateful graduation dinner, our family looked remarkably different. The transformation wasn't instant or easy, but the gradual changes added up to a significant shift in our family dynamic. True to their word, my parents had been attending weekly family therapy sessions. The first few were incredibly tense, with my father frequently checking his watch and my mother crying through most of the hour. But slowly, with the guidance of Dr. Tor, Catherine Reynolds, a family therapist specializing in parental favoritism, they began to recognize patterns they had been blind to for decades. My father struggled the most with acknowledging how his behavior had hurt me. He had always prided himself on being a good provider, and it was difficult for him to accept that financial support alone wasn't enough to make a child feel loved. In our third session, Dr. Reynolds asked him to list 5 things he knew about me that weren't related to my accomplishments or career. His long, uncomfortable silence spoke volumes. "I don't really know who Rachel is as a person," he finally admitted, looking at me with new awareness. "I've never tried to find out." That moment marked a turning point in our relationship. My father began making earnest, if sometimes awkward, attempts to know me better. He started asking questions about my interests outside of nursing, my opinions on current events, my hopes for the future. He sent me articles about healthcare innovations he thought might interest me. Small gestures, but meaningful in their intention. My mother's journey was different, but equally significant. Through individual therapy, she began addressing the wounds from her own childhood of feeling second best to her sister. She called me one evening sobbing as she apologized for projecting her own insecurities onto our mother-daughter relationship. "I was so afraid of not being a good enough mother that I poured all my energy into creating a perfect experience for Amanda," she explained. "With you, I held back because I was afraid I would fail you. And in trying to protect myself from that fear, I ended up causing exactly what I was afraid of." Amanda and I continued to strengthen our newfound sister relationship. The Switzerland trip money had been repurposed at Amanda's insistence. Part of it went to a weekend spa retreat for the two of us, our first real opportunity to bond as adult sisters away from family pressure. During long walks and late-night conversations in our hotel room, we shared perspectives on our childhood that helped us both make sense of our family's dysfunction. "I used to think you had it so easy," I confessed one night, "but now I see that being the golden child came with its own kind of burden." Amanda nodded. "The expectations were crushing. I was never allowed to fail or even be average. My entire worth was tied to performance and achievement. At least you got to discover who you really are independent of their approval." This insight helped heal some of my lingering resentment. We had both been damaged by our parents' favoritism, just in different ways. My personal healing journey happened alongside these family changes. I found fulfillment in my nursing career, quickly earning recognition for my calm competence in crisis situations. I joined a support group for adult children of dysfunctional families, where I learned I wasn't alone in my experiences. I began seeing a therapist who helped me work through issues of self-worth and set healthy boundaries with my family. Those boundaries became an essential part of my healing. I declined family invitations when I needed space. I redirected conversations when they veered into old patterns. I expressed my needs clearly instead of swallowing them to keep peace. Sometimes this caused tension, but more often, it earned a new kind of respect from my parents. Grandma Martha remained my steadfast supporter throughout this process. "Healing isn't linear," she reminded me during our weekly phone calls. "There will be setbacks and old patterns that resurface. The important thing is that everyone is trying now." Small victories accumulated over time. My father helped me with the down payment on my first small home, an act of generosity he had previously reserved for Amanda. My mother began calling regularly just to check in, asking thoughtful questions about my work, and listening attentively to my answers. Amanda and I established a monthly sister dinner, where family topics were off limits, allowing us to develop a relationship based on our own connection, rather than our shared family history. When University Medical Center awarded me a clinical excellence recognition for my work with trauma patients, my parents not only attended the ceremony, but brought flowers and took photos like proud parents should. My father even teared up during my brief acceptance speech, a display of emotion I had never seen from him before. I'm sorry it took us so long to see you, he said afterward, his voice gruff with emotion. You are an extraordinary person, Rachel. I'm proud to be your father. Those words, so simple yet so profound, helped heal a wound that had been open for decades. As I reflect on this journey now, I realize that the damage caused by playing favorites between children runs deeper than most parents understand. The golden child suffers under impossible expectations, while the less favored child internalizes a sense of fundamental unworthiness. These patterns continue until someone has the courage to name them and demand change. For our family, I was the one who finally spoke that truth, terrifying as it was. The process that followed has been painful, messy, and at times discouraging. Old habits reassert themselves, hurt feelings resurface, trust rebuilds slowly. But we are moving forward. Last month, we had a family dinner to celebrate my promotion at work. For the first time in my memory, the conversation flowed equally between all family members. My parents asked about my patience with genuine interest. Amanda shared news about her new job. We laughed at shared memories and created new ones. I looked around the table and realized I finally felt something I had craved my entire life, seen valued and loved for exactly who I am. As Grandma Martha wisely told me, forgiveness isn't about excusing what happened. It's a gift you give yourself, releasing the burden of resentment so you can move forward lighter. I'm still learning to fully embrace that wisdom, but I'm getting closer every day. By speaking my truth and demanding respect, I not only changed my own life, but helped break a cycle that might have continued into the next generation. If you're watching this and recognizing patterns of favoritism in your own family, whether you're the golden child or the one who feels invisible, know that change is possible. It starts with naming the truth, even when that truth is uncomfortable. It requires courage, boundaries, and often professional support. But the freedom on the other side is worth every difficult conversation. What conversation have you been avoiding that might set you free? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe to hear more stories of family healing and personal growth. Thank you for listening to my journey, and remember, you deserve to be seen and valued exactly as you are.